Happy Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Tropical MBA podcast. We're doing this thing one-on-one today. I want to share with you just a thought process, a opportunity that was inspired by an experience I had a few weeks ago. I'm going to share 7 questions that you can bring to your AI friend of choice to help you face down and identify the next big opportunity in your business. I feel like the vibe online in business opportunity space is that, opportunities are easy. They're everywhere. Keep doing stuff. Good stuff happens. But in real life, what I often find is that opportunities exist on the opposite side of one challenging decision. And often that challenging decision involves overcoming a fear. That's kind of strange. Why is that strange? Because maybe there's a structural element to it. Like, why would you have to overcome a fear to have a successful business? It's because you're doing things that other people aren't doing. Like, it's sort of a relative thing. Like, if you just simply take it as it comes, then you'll get average results. So we're seeking asymmetrical results. We're seeking unique results. And therefore, there's often something that we have to do, even launching a new product, declaring yourself responsible for X set of outcomes, being confident about the results your product can deliver for a target market. These are not normal things. These are things that require overcoming a fear of judgment, a fear of what other people will think, a fear of doing the wrong thing. The vibe online will often say that starting a business, you just go out, you do the X, Y, and Z, it all happens. Not really what I see. I've met thousands of entrepreneurs. Typically, it involves some overcoming. Now, this is also the case when we're seeking a breakthrough or a change. There's often one simple but scary thing that you can do that will make everything else subsequently easier. This is exactly what we do in good coaching engagements, which is we try to narrow down and break down a problem that we can solve. It might be a complicated problem, but once we solve it, guess what? Everything else starts rolling. We start showing up on social media about how everything is going great. And often those problems are going to sit in certain categories of things, which we're going to cover today. I'll give you the case study that inspired this whole thing. I recently became a client of a local business, so not a digital business. And I got the chance to sit down with the founder, and we got to talking about business as you do. It was obvious what she did for a living. She ran this educational business, local here in Austin. And she says, what do you do? And of course, it's like a slot machine in Vegas going around in my head. I'm like, which one do I say? Which one do I say? And I say, I'm a business coach, because I want to steer this conversation in the direction of learning about her life as a founder. Well, it turns out she's in a really, really tough spot with the new location that she had recently opened. And so I started asking some of these questions that I would ask clients. If you don't mind, I'm a business coach. I love talking about business. I won't share this information with anybody except for the whole Tropical MBA podcast audience, of course. So anyway, we ended up discussing the business. We asked some of the questions I'm going to share with you today. And I got to the end of it and I was like, first off, number one, open to sharing about the business. That is a positive signal. But she faces a really tough challenge, especially from her perspective. From my perspective, it's, hey, if we do this one hard thing, everything in your business career gets a lot easier after. But I could also sense that it was going to be really, really tough for her to do it. And that's where business coaching comes in. That's where masterminds come in. That's where, we're doing it in DC, Mexico, Barcelona, Bangkok, going and saying, look, man, I got to do this thing. I'm scared to do this thing, but I know that it's going to make everything else easier. Here's the cool thing about AI. We can do this with training wheels on, right? We can face our fears in our office, privately, on a walk, look at the pros and cons, and perhaps be better prepared, better suited to take on the challenges that our businesses face. So what do you say we do it? One more thing, what struck me, talking with a local business founder versus, doing client work with digital businesses, is we all get into business because we're creative, we're passionate about something, whether it's our product, our service, our solution. And what's fascinating is just the overlap between our passion for that and then entrepreneurship as a separate skill set that's married with whatever it is our product or service is genius at, whatever we're great at. That's not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is something different. That's why we go to conferences. That's why we get business coaches. That's why we read business books. It's why we listen to podcasts like this one. It's so fascinating to me how absolutely no difference in the approach to a local business to a digital business. It's the same skill set at the end of the day. It's entrepreneurship. We're setting business goals. We're working backwards from them. We're trying to agree on some form of truth about the business with as much real data as we can, identifying the unknowns and identifying the fastest path to break through and deliver more value for our customers and hopefully get more value in return, thus reaching our goals. Okay. Before I jump in, I'll just give a case study as to like what this particular founder's challenge was, because it's relatable. When she expressed it and I got to the conclusion, we got to the conclusion together, I was like, man, wow, yeah, I feel this kind of sucks, but it's also sweet because we know the challenge. It's going to suck in the short term to solve it, but then everything gets easy. And I could see the resistance, like, maybe I could do anything but solve this particular problem. And in this case, the problem was the overhead costs on the new location were too high. And the investment in that location was not returning like she had expected. And that's a big bummer because that means you got to go back to all your clients. You got to change locations. You got to break a lease. You got to make new commitments. But the other options, selling your way out of it, creating a new business model, I mean, you're just behind the ball every single year in this business for no particular reason. And a lot of us find ourselves in that. We make a big investment that we think is going to pay off. We make a lot of commitments in the direction of that investment. It could be a team member. It could be a product. It could be a whole new vertical or whatever. It doesn't work out. We got to be able to backtrack and sort it out. And it sucks in the short term, but it makes our lives easier in the long term. So that's the cool part about AI. It's like, hey, we can have these conversations about what it looks like to do these hard things and get ourselves ready to do those hard things. So let's jump into the 7 questions without further ado. Here's the first question. Make line items of your largest business expenses and what they produced last quarter. So what is the ROI on your biggest expenses? Now, for a lot of us traditionally, these can be hard questions to answer because we don't always run our businesses with the best of books. And this is why when you onboard as a client with me as a business coach, we take a lot of time digging in numbers. We need the numbers. That's where we start everything from. AI makes it so much easier just to dump every spreadsheet you got, every exported CSV. If it's not perfect, just get it in there, start to parse the data and start to figure out what's real in the numbers in your business. You don't necessarily need a high level finance professional to be able to do this. All we're looking to do is determine what is the ROI of your biggest expenses? How did they perform last quarter? And a lot of us aren't experienced capital allocators. It could be our skill set, but it's also our market, right? We try things and it doesn't work out. We have to retract. That nimbleness is our advantage as entrepreneurs. And using AI for this is remarkable because a lot of the reason we don't focus on these sorts of things is like, well, it's going to take so-and-so, my bookkeeper, X number of weeks to pull this together. We just don't need that anymore. Just give AI everything, make sure it's considering all the numbers, and get to something that you think is pretty close to the reality and do your strategic thinking from there. Specifically for most of us, we're looking at things like leases, we're looking at payroll. A lot of the investments we make are only vaguely attached to the idea of growth. In order to be this size of company, I need to have something that looks like this. We can really start to challenge those assumptions with a long form conversation with the mastermind business coach or AI in this case. Here's what's fascinating about this. So here's question 1B, which is, do your margins and expense categories exceed your business category standards? So now this, talk about getting all your business data in one place. Now, all of a sudden, AI can go out and do deep research on your industry and say, well, you're paying more than your competition here, or your expenses are out of line with what similar businesses are doing. As a bootstrapper that wants to be competitive, you need to be better. That's what entrepreneurship is all about, finding ways to lead your category in terms of margins. So all this information, at least the beginning of decent research, can be at our fingertips right now. It might not have been for many of us as little as 3, 6, 12 months ago. Every quarter, let's come back to this stuff and take a look. How are we performing relative to our industry? Do we have a perspective that drives down expenses and drives up margins? Because in a small business scenario, it's those margins that will lead to wealth outcomes, number one. And number two, your ability to innovate, sustain, stay in the game. Where we don't want to end up is where a lot of founders do, which is I can sustain lower margins because I don't need much. Well, that strategy only works out for so long. It ultimately leads in business failure. So we want to seek better expense profiles and better margins than the industry standard. Now, you might say, well, that's tough to do. I just started out. Well, that's your job. We're going to start to do some brainstorming about how we can outperform the industry. We are nimble, we are creative, we are passionate. That is our job as startup founders. Question number 2, where did you get your last 10 customers from? So we started to break down how this business got customers in the door. For most of us, it's not so simple, but AI is great at creating visualizations, diagrams, so we can start to understand the actual system of like, how did these customers arrive here and what are they worth to the business? In fact, out of the last 10 who came through the door, out of the last 100, who are the most valuable? What's different about those clients than the other 8? In fact, it's very typical that those 2 will spend as much as the rest of the 8 combined. Is our business set up to be able to handle that? Most businesses, even digital businesses, don't have a reliable way to visualize and to optimize how customers arrive in the business. Once you have it on a map, you can speed up the system. It's like, oh, it just happens whenever I have a personal relationship with someone. It's like, well, how do the personal relationships happen? Like, how many emails, how many conferences, how many phone calls, how many forum posts? Like, what led to that? Because that is the most reliable growth path to your next breakthrough. Question number 3, if you had to raise prices by 20% tomorrow, how would you do it? This is a great question to ask AI. We've already gotten the industry benchmarks. So now we have deep research on where our pricing is relative to our competition. Why are we priced lower? Why are we priced the same? Can we price higher? These are really interesting questions. A bonus point here, AI is really good at identifying optimizations for pricing. So you just might have some holes in your bucket that you haven't looked at for a long time. You might have priced something at $30 and not be aware of the idea that pricing it at $39 is psychologically the same. So now you've identified just one small, actually easy, no fear required, just raise your price to $39. That's going to roll indefinitely. AI is really good at finding like holes in your pricing game. This was a 3B as we're doing a sort of pricing analysis. And again, like if you're walking in as a coach to an outside business, we all see this in other people's businesses. It's hard to see it in our own. Pricing is the fastest lever. Like if you're doing a 30-minute session with somebody, you're looking at expenses and pricing. That's basically it. You're just really breaking it down. So if you haven't done it in the last 90 days, go back to AI and let's have a pricing conversation. Toss this one in. We'll call it 3B for extra credit. Do you have a successful product that helps your best customers pay 3 to 10x more than your average customer? This was a breakthrough right there on the spot within 30 minutes. It just did not occur to this particular founder. All right, question number 4. Who owns which decisions in the business and is it written down? We've done a lot of episodes about scorecards, organizational charts, roles and responsibilities over the years. It can be tedious to keep up with this paperwork. Guess who it's not tedious for? Your favorite AI friend. So we can toss all this information about your business, your company, the key roles and responsibilities and numbers for every single person in the business. And AI can help keep tabs with that. Even in our case, with our Hive, we can actually make a connection between the actual data source and the work the person's actually doing. So this can be dynamically updated. So we're moving into a world where all this traditional business coaching stuff, where historically, Ian and I would say, like, we go into these business coaching scenarios working on our business and say, okay, well, we need to make an org change. We need to change all the roles and responsibilities. It would take us 6 months, not just for the documentation, but for the actual execution. Well, now we can get the documentation done in an hour. This is really, really exciting for all of us that have been complaining about not working on our business, because now it's easier than ever. And the number one thing here, check out your cap table as well. If you have a partnership, if you have investors, if you have anybody else involved in terms of who the ownership structure of your business is, run this by it as well. With Ian and I, like, what's Ian responsible for? What am I responsible for? We're the most important people in the business, according to the cap table. What are we responsible for bringing to the table in this business? How does it flow through the whole organization? So again, where does this end in fear? I mean, for a local business, you're working together with people every day. You're asking in the first question, like, am I ROIing the expense, my investment in these people? And now you're saying, well, what specific roles and responsibilities are they delivering it? Is it clear to them? Is it documented? We can get all this done really, really quickly with an AI interlocutor. Question number 6, where are you spending your time? Client acquisition or customer acquisition, product delivery, or other? And what does other look like? For most of us, we want to optimize for client acquisition. We want to define the growth engine that drives and keeps the business healthy. That means we're going to have to ask a lot of hard questions about product delivery and margins and simplification and getting ourselves out of that so we can drive the business towards our goals. No more complaining about being stuck in product delivery. We can have a clear roadmap for ourselves about what it would take to get out of it. I think what a lot of people are going to find, whether it's through business coaching or whether through a process like this, is that you don't have a business model that allows you to get out of product delivery. And again, now I have to face down a fear. And I mention this specifically because this comes up a lot when I talk to founders in calls, where we're just not designed to ever be out of product delivery. The product depends on us to be delivered, and we have not built a system that would allow us to get out of it. So if you're feeling like that, now's an opportunity to get into this stuff. You hear theoretically, I put it up on my whiteboard historically here. Here's how the product delivery, the value delivery engine works. Here's the key markers that need to be met. Here's the timelines in which these things need to happen. Here's the actual cost of delivery. For a lot of us in our businesses, we just subsume the cost into I work extra hard and extra long. Well, that's not a system for getting out of it and focusing our energy on client acquisition. And this again is like back to the top, that fundamental tension between entrepreneurship and the thing we do really well. Over time, we want to transition to doing entrepreneurship just as well as we do the thing that we do really well that got us in the business in the first place. So where are you spending your time? I've done some coaching sessions with Taylor Pearson over the years, and one of the first things he does, and it's excruciating, is he makes you do a time audit for 2 weeks on how you spend your time. And I just feel like, Taylor, where's the box for watching YouTube videos? I don't see it on here, but so it's excruciating. Maybe that's a fear we got to face down, is like, are we being productive? We say we want things, but is our actions lining up with them? So I think this is a really productive path to go down. Okay, final one. I'll share with you one of our favorite conversations to have at DC Black events, which is this. If you had to grow your business 100% in 90 days, what would you actually do? Sometimes the answers are way more feasible than you think they would be, which then forces you to get out of your comfort zone and consider, well, why aren't I doing this? Do I not want to grow? Maybe you don't want to grow 100% in 90 days. But it's interesting to sort of set a upper limit for velocity in terms of what you're doing. A lot of us plod around. A lot of us get demotivated because we work harder and the results don't come in. And you can start your conversation with AI this way. Look, I'm feeling bummed out because I just feel like I'm doing more and I'm not seeing more for my work. In the early days, I was doing stuff, I was getting clients, I was making more money, things were working out really well. Now I feel like I'm lost in the soup. The flavor isn't changing enough for me to continue to be motivated. That's why the book Traction is genius, because they're talking about this concept that a lot of us feel once we've built a successful business. It's like, man, I just don't feel like I have traction. Well, this question aims at exactly that. If you had to grow 100% in 90 days, what would you do? Okay, you can change the numbers to whatever you want, but you get the idea. Set the upper limit, have the brainstorming session. Hey, if we really had to moonshot this thing very quickly because my back was against the wall, what are some opportunities or ideas, strategies I could explore? I think you'll be surprised at the results. And that's why every time we meet up with 7 and 8 figure founders, we have these conversations because it helps open up your mind. And it also does a little bit of this fear setting, right? Okay, well, I'm worried about this small little thing that sits in front of me, but if I want to grow like this, I might have to do a bunch of these types of things. And it's like, maybe the one thing isn't that bad anymore because now we're talking about a bunch of things. And sure, that outcome looks interesting, so I'll explore this line of thinking. So those are the 7 questions. And these were just the ones that came up in 30 minutes. And it's like, we got a grab bag of these. If you listen to the Tropical MBA podcast for the last 5 years, you've heard us do a bunch of episodes where we have different diagnostic questions. We even have a diagnostic document that you can download at tropicalmba.com/resources. These were just the ones that occurred to me when I was speaking with this founder, and they turned out to be really productive. I ran them through AI when I got home, and I was really happy with the results. And I felt like, man, we're really got a lot out of just asking 7 simple questions, only spent 30 to 60 minutes with it. And so every quarter, putting it in your calendar, going back and taking time to work on your business, it's more productive than ever. So to review, the 7 questions are: what is the ROI on your biggest expenses? Where did your last 10 customers come from? If you had to raise prices by 20%, how would you do it? Do you have a successful product that helps your best customers pay 3 to 10x more? Who owns decisions in the business? Is it tracked and is it written down? What are you spending time on that isn't customer acquisition or product delivery, or how are you spending your time? If you had to grow 100% in 90 days, how would you do it? I'll give a little bonus one while I'm at it. Ask AI what your business is worth. I'll tell you why I mentioned that, because there was a moment where when I was speaking with this founder, they pushed back on something, and their pushback was, well, that's what's valuable in this business. And I could tell they had like a dollar number associated with it. And in my head, I was like, nah, it's not worth that. And that's interesting because that was a disconnect in terms of what is actually valuable in your business. Certainly, a lot of the things in our business are more valuable to us than they are to the marketplace, but it's worth knowing that. And you can start down that journey. Again, this is something that Ian and I do all the time, is we look at all of our business units, all of our brands, all of our assets, all of our IP, and we ask ourselves, what is this worth right now? The bottom line is, as founders, we get attached to what we've built. We often overvalue it. And we often do that to prevent ourselves from having to do the hard things that would make it be worth that, because we probably have an intuition that it could be worth that. The question that we're asking today is, can we take the actions that will make it worth that sooner rather than later? So there you go. Cool. The links to these questions will be in the show notes, so you can just post them into your AI. If you have better questions than these, I want to hear from you. So go ahead, go to the show notes of this one, grab the questions, toss them into your favorite AI working partner, and let me know what you come up with, and let me know what questions really work for you and your business. I'd love to highlight your story of how you achieved a breakthrough by asking some difficult questions of your business and of yourself. We'll have the exact prompts there as well. And of course, you can download our whole GPS business diagnostic document at tropicalmba.com/resources. A few things for those of you curious of what's going on below the podcast, so to speak. The whole team's flying to Mexico here in a few days. We're so excited. We have 200 attendees in Mexico City. We'll be asking questions like these of each other and generally having a good time, eating as many tacos as possible. We are opening up new DC Black masterminds this summer. So if you run a 7 or 8 figure business and want to join one of our monthly masterminds, make sure you go to dynamitecircle.com and click on the DC Black tab. It's a great place for these kinds of conversations. So if you run a 7 or 8 figure business, one of our most successful new initiatives in the past 12 months was to launch masterminds for the team members themselves. So marketers, general managers, any leader within your organization, we are doing masterminds for those leaders as well. And that's been an enormous success. In fact, the feedback from our facilitators, because all masterminds are professionally facilitated, is that your teams come much better prepared to the masterminds than the founders themselves. So pretty cool. For those of you looking to meet up with other amazing entrepreneurs, we've got events in Barcelona and Bangkok coming up later in the calendar year, among many others. You can find out more about that at dynamitecircle.com. That's it for this week's podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.